All right, we are back. We are back. We just ended the last stream. We are going to air the Chauvin verdict. All right, let's find it because we just got an alert. Shout out to our brother Grim, aka Master Grim, aka the Urban Mystic. He had put that in the inbox. Let me see. Derek Chauvin trial. I'm trying to see if we could get a live. Let me see. Let me see. Let me see if anybody in the back office. All right, I'll leave it in for this one. All right, so we're gonna put this in the let me see. Let's stream. Let's share this video. Oh, so do I sound clearer, Sister Satra?
We live already?
Yeah, we live, bro.
All right.
So let's share out. Let me share out the link to this, and I got to use the bathroom.
Oh, all right.
I ain't mean to share that on the air, but I got to use the bathroom, family. This what happened when you live. It is what it
What happens?
is.
Do they have
um,
like a stream or something? They probably
um,
gonna have a stream. They're probably gonna have a stream that we can run, right?
yeah. Now I got it. I got it playing right now.
Oh, okay.
Oh, they saying the verdict will be read at 4:30 Eastern. All right, so we could kind of continue the conversation that we were having. So I got
Yeah.
ABC pulled up. I'm gonna share this
Okay.
out. Um, we're gonna be live with when the verdict is read. Tune in with us, family. Tune in and watch. And let's get this up. Let's share this out. We get to have a little bit of a grace period. Let me tweet that out. I spelled this dude's name all wrong. Who cares? F this dude. Be honest with you. Let me see. Let me see.
Man, one thing about New York, and you already know. Never mind. I ain't even gonna say it.
Man, they
People
already.
and their dogs. They
Huh?
dogs, yo. They dogs. They don't pick up after they dogs,
Oh
man.
yeah, that's one thing about New York, boy. They do not pick up.
It's terrible, man.
Some people was mad at my post
What
because I
post?
said I did a post that said two of the jurors as just reported a tweet as just reported are black immigrants who have never had any interaction with the police. I'm curious to see how this turns out. You had some people. I woke up to some tweets, boy. Some people responded to me. They
Yeah.
were.
Yo, I mean, look, that's one of them harsh realities that nobody wants to deal with. You know, they don't want to deal with it because they want to try to pretend like we all black the same. No, that's not true. It's not true, man. Candace Owens is a great example of that.
Facts.
You
Yo,
know,
y'all go
what's
in, brother Josh. I gotta mute out real quick and jump off the cam. Y'all go in. They're gonna read the trial around 4:30, so we could kind of pick up on the conversation
yeah,
and go that we were just having. So I can run through some things before that. But y'all just pick up and just go from here real quick.
Yeah. But anyway, Candace Owens is a great example of that. What's the other dude that passed away, King Face? People like that, these high profile people, they really give you an opportunity to see that we really not all black the same, man. Not. We're not. We don't experience America the same way. Now, maybe some of the newer generations, yeah, right? Because they facing the same kind of racial discrimination as, as African Americans. You know what I'm saying? But that has a lot to do with the fact that they've assimilated into our culture and into um, our communities, right? And so for race soldiers pretending to be police officers, none of that shit matters. They just like, as far as they're concerned, they all quote unquote African Americans. You know what I mean? So that's what that comes down to. So they wind up experiencing, to some degree, when it comes to racism and interaction with police officers, they wind up experiencing the African American experience. That's what happens, particularly in places like New York City, right? Heavy, heavy, heavy immigrant population, you know, heavy immigrant population, right? Caribbean, African, whatever, right? But it's very heavy. And so the bottom line is the European cops, usually they come from the suburbs into the inner city. They don't really give a fuck about, your ethnic background. They just see niggas. You know what I'm saying? They see niggas and they don't really give a shit. They don't really give a shit, where you came from. They just see niggas. Period. And so that's what that is. So they get to experience it a little something. They get to experience it a little something, in social interactions with cops. But I don't know about economically. But I'll tell you this, Naheem touched on it a little bit in the last stream. In New York, one of the things you could be damn sure of is that a lot of the stores in this city that's owned by black people are largely owned by black immigrants. That's an actual fact. It's an actual fact. Now Harlem has a number of black-owned businesses. Some of them are people of descendants of freedmen, but a lot of them are immigrants.
Hey, Ali, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, my bad. I was talking earlier, but I guess I was having mic issues. I fixed it now. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, a lot of them are in fact immigrants, right? Yeah, they go through shit, but to Logic's point, even the shit that they're going through, it doesn't necessarily help us, particularly if they're not going to rally with us against these things, racial targeting, racial oppression, whatever the case is, in the public and the private sectors, right? Because a lot of times people are very selfish. I got mine, you get yours, and then, to be honest with you, it becomes very, very tribal, right? Because I grew up around a lot of people of other ethnic backgrounds in New York City. New York City is a real melting pot, right? A lot of, I ain't even gonna say melting pot, but it's like more like a salad. It ain't like really melting because everybody don't meld together like that. But it's definitely like a salad with a whole bunch of different elements in it.
Or
Right?
maybe like a buffet or something, because you got your buffet, all of the food is segregated. You know what I mean?
Right. All right. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's segregated. You're right. And so, people practice tribalism. That's a fact. One of the things that we've been taught is that tribalism is bad. The fact of the matter is, we should have been practicing tribalism, bro. That's something we should have been doing. Everybody else has understood that shit. They've been practicing tribalism for years. Our people are on this whole kumbaya, or we need all of these other people from the diaspora to come and help us but that wasn't their intentions. And then too, a lot of times these people leave from other countries, and on their way here, they're told, don't get involved in the Negroes' issues, right? The issues of the American Negro, y'all stay out of that because those are not y'all's issues. I had a brother from Africa tell me that on one of my last jobs that I was working on. Straight up. They straight up told me, like they tell you when you leaving, don't get involved in the issues of the American Negroes. Don't them African
Hey,
Americans.
hey, hey, if you ever hear somebody say, I was told to keep my head down, that's code for that.
Yes,
Keeping your head down, that's code for that.
right. That's a fact. And they'll like if you ask them, they may not come out and say it, but if you ask them, they probably be honest enough to tell you, like, yeah, we was told to stay out of y'all shit. And for the large part, they do. Right?
Hey,
So now you
I
sorry,
wanted to
God.
just say something real quick in regards to the what you were talking about, like, you know, you black immigrants and you know, again, I always talk about intersection of circles, you know, is where we have some commonality, like you mentioned, you know, interaction with police. And, you know, speaking on in terms of speaking on one accord, or you know, being in alignment of our interests or whatever the case may be. The conflict comes when you try to bring up points like I just brought up about the black middle class, you know,
Right,
because
right.
they will be considered black,
Yeah,
and they're disproportionately at worst going to be in the middle class, you know, because of the
yeah,
selectivity. You know, like I said, I brought up the um graduate. I'll talk. Oh, I didn't talk about this on the last broadcast, but you know, look at the I went and looked at like the college graduation rates and the high school graduation rates of freedmen in 1960. High school graduation rate was less than 20%. College graduation rate was like, I believe it was less than 3%. By
yeah,
1980, I think it had improved to like 50% and on the high school level and like 10% on the college level, right? But if
yeah.
you and today, I don't think it's too much better on the college level. I think we something like, and it's not even disaggregated, I believe, but it's something like 16% or
Yeah.
22%, something like that. But we know that you go and look at certain, let's say African countries. Somebody remind me what the average graduation rate for college, having a bachelor's degree for, let's say, like Nigerian immigrants. It's very high, you know, especially coming from African countries. The college graduation rate and having a degree is very high. It's very high for an advanced degree. It's also very high when you talk about coming over with H-1B visas. So you coming in already doing skilled labor, you know, um,
Right.
coming over with having, you know, wealth. You look at Los Angeles, you know, this is not a thing about black immigrants. What we're talking about is when it comes time to speak up, like our situation is dire and it's bad. You
That's
cannot
right.
say like that. You can't look at your family in America and say my family is toe up, you know, probably because majority of family that's here is probably all right, you know, or you're all right. I can say on both sides of my family, I look at the majority of people, it's so up. You know, but we don't have a whole lot of wealth. You just go and look and see what happens when people die. You know, you can see
Exactly.
what the wealth situation is looking like. You know, everybody's trying to scramble to get some money to pay for things, and you know, it's not a whole lot that's being passed down, and you
My
know,
brother, I had recently, two family members pass away, and we had to put the collection plate up for the family to make sure everything was taken care of. You know, one of them I was kind of surprised, a little bit surprised about, but the other one not so much. But one of them I was actually surprised that we had to do it, but we did. You know, we had to do the whole GoFundMe. You know, we didn't really circulate it to a lot of people outside the family. We just circulated amongst the family, and we all put in and made sure everything was everything. But you're absolutely right. People die, and a lot of times it's not enough there to do the proper burials and take care of everything. You know, so Absolutely.
Is this the
I
Chauvin
know.
child right here?
I don't know. I guess so. He said he was scheming it.
Okay, Naheem, if you there, check to see if you can unmute this or add the volume to this thing, because I think they started. No, well, I don't know.
No, they're not
Maybe
starting. They're
maybe
just
not right
showing
now. Maybe
highlights.
not right
No, yeah,
now.
they're
Okay.
just
Yeah.
showing highlights. Can y'all hear me?
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I can hear you.
All right, all right.
Okay, all right. I was just checking. I seen somebody talking. I didn't know what it was.
Come
All
up.
right.
I heard you.
But yeah, I want to say this too. Like, if a person wants to say, because let's look at. I know all the wealth data in terms of color of wealth report, and I'm thinking about like in my city, Washington D.C. metro area, where you got
Right.
middle black family. I think native black is 3,500, and I think middle African black is like 3,100 or something like that.
Mm.
When they'll say, well, our wealth is low too. Well, I mean, first generation or second generation, and you coming from maybe refugee status or whatever the case may be. If you just understand, look, if you look at Latinos
Mm-hmm.
who are fleeing poverty or fleeing like whatever they fleeing
Right.
to get a better opportunity in America. You're first generation or second generation here. Like, you are coming, like, you never had a chance to build here in America. So it makes sense for your wealth to be low. But for our people, we've been here for countless generations. Like, we don't know no history nowhere else. For
Yeah. But
countless
you know what?
centuries, it makes no sense for us to be on the course to zero wealth at the middle. It makes no look, that same report that we referenced, the middle black family being worth
Mm-hmm.
$1,700 without depreciating assets. That report, if you look at it, it says that by 2020 we were supposed to be at 1,400, not 1,700 was 2013 wealth. We talking about
Right.
2020. It projected us to be at 1,400. So we need to be
Right.
saying the middle black family is worth 1,400. Just to update the
Right.
lingo for y'all. But if we get the COVID data, if they would do that again, it'd probably be less than that. You know.
Right.
So
Well,
by the way,
they
start saying middle black family is worth 1,400 now, because that's what that's based on that same report.
it may be that you got to remember they did all of this pandemic relief, and a lot of people that didn't have wound up having shit that they didn't have before. You know, there's a report that I saw talking about Americans having more savings now behind all of the pandemic relief and not really being able to go out and spend than they had before the pandemic hit. So that's something to consider too.
Let me say real quick. I was on Clubhouse the other day, yesterday, and there was a sister that came into our room, Nigerian born, very well spoken. So I knew she was born in the United States, right? So she took issue when I said we're not the same, right? So when she got up, when it was finally her turn to speak, she basically said, I kind of take issue with this idea that we're not the same. I think we are the same. Yada yada yada. She gave her little breakdown. I said, okay, that's fine. I said, what do your parents do for a living? She
Right.
skirted around that question, and everybody on the stage essentially pressed her. She was like, well, I really don't like to discuss, my people, my family's personal. I mean, I was like, that's not a real personal question. What do your parents do for a living? That's not necessarily a personal question. I'm trying to make a point here. And she was like, well, they're in the medical field, right?
Right.
So everybody on
They
the stage,
doctors.
yeah, her mother, they was like, yeah, her father's a doctor and her mother's a nurse, right? I said, see, sis, we're very different. And the fact that a lot of people don't understand that, how many Black Americans that have a mother that's a nurse and a father that's a doctor? I don't know one personally,
Hey, my
but I
father
do
was a
know.
sheet metal. My father was a sheet metal mechanic. They called him a
Mhm.
sheet metal mechanic, and my mother was a so-called administrative assistant, which means a
Basic,
secretary. Yeah.
basically, right? And my father was a Brooklyn street cat that got his life together, start working, going to work every day, and then they snatched him up for a crime that he didn't commit. No, he didn't commit the crime.
Right.
Everybody knew he didn't do it. Of course, he didn't tell who did it. Did 3 years in prison. Messed the whole trajectory of the course of his life up. So we're not the same. And I was trying to explain this to the sister. You know, we're just not the same. We're not.
Nope. No, my people came from farms, sharecropping, all that kind of shit, man. That's where my people came from. My pops had a 3rd grade education, bro. 3rd grade. He didn't go further than the 3rd grade. And you know why? He always told us the reason he didn't go past the 3rd grade was because his family was so impoverished, he had to start working at that age to help his family. This was down in the South, in South Carolina.
Yep.
3rd grade, bro. But I'm going to say this about him. Let me say this. He was an incredible dude because he was real smart. He was smart on his own. He learned the skills of carpentry on his own, self-taught. This dude was like a master carpenter, man. Could build damn near anything. He learned how to do the whole sheet metal thing on his own. He didn't go to school for none of that shit. He was an auto mechanic. This dude could take a car apart, put that shit back together by his damn self, yo. You know what I'm saying? This the kind of man it was. He damn near build a house by himself. He didn't go to school for none of that shit. 3rd grade education. But he was like a mastermind too. His wisdom was out as well. You know what I'm saying?
So, I stress that point. And Ali, you made an excellent point earlier when you said that everybody basically came over here and got to practice tribalism, and we never did. We never did. We seen people with the same skin tone as us and assumed that they were us. And that series on CBS, Bob Hart's Abby Shola.
Oh God, that shit makes me sick.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the clearest indicators, right? Because that is art imitating life.
Yeah.
Where the sister and the sister, but just one is Nigerian and one is Black American, African American. Their children get into a fight and they're arguing. And the Nigerian sister is being blatantly xenophobic.
Indeed.
Saying that, at least my son is going to be a doctor, but your son is going to be a criminal, an inmate, basically.
Right.
Then there was
Go ahead, finish.
Then there was a scene when they're eating lunch, and it's the 2 Nigerian women and the African American sister, and the sister said, well, I'm going to choose a Nigerian Igbo man first, then a regular, any other type of Nigerian second. Third, I think it was maybe somebody from Africa. Fourth, or Chinese, I can't remember. Fourth was a white man, and last was an African American man. So the African American sisters said, "So wait a minute, you mean to tell me you would choose the African American brother last?" She was like, "That's right." She said it proud.
That's right.
That's right, Bob Sanders, and it's still on TV. Yeah,
because a lot of them people actually are trained to look down on us, right? And that's as unfortunate as that is. That's part of the reality of our existence. You know, they look down on us. And in Harlem, right, there are a number of African immigrants that live in Harlem, right? They're pretty much all in one area, but they spread out a little bit, concentrated in one area, right? It's usually they're like somewhere around 116th Street between Lenox and 7th, right? Where the majority of them are. And in that vicinity. But the truth is, they don't really associate with Black Americans. We all in the same area, but they really separate. They like a city within the city, so to speak, right? Their culture is different. They still maintain their cultures in terms of their dress, their food, the languages, all that. They still speak their native languages, all that shit. And they really don't interact with Black Americans other than by way of commercial engagement. So they'll take your money in some kind of commercial transaction, but other than that, they don't really rock with us, especially the Ethiopians. The Ethiopians don't even fuck with the other Africans. That's the shit that's crazy. They don't even, yo, you gotta see this shit. It's crazy.
Yeah, hey, I see it on
Close to the same vicinity that I was telling you about, where other West Africans are, because most of those Africans down in that vicinity are West Africans. But the Ethiopians that live in that area, they don't even fuck with the West Africans. Niggas keep to themselves. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a whole bunch of funny shit. Like a whole bunch of funny shit. Like when you really analyze it all, it's crazy. But that's what it is. That's what it is. You know? God damn. Let me stop, man.
Nah,
Yo,
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about, bro. I mean, it's not just, let's put it this way, it's not just New York, you know. But I think part of it is that we have not been, you know, setting up the proper barriers. You know, so we've been allowing ourselves to be violated, and we don't even know. It's like, you know, it's like a woman who, you know, you thinking you having fun, and you thinking that you doing, you know, your promiscuity is like, you know, you doing the solid for the guy, for men or whatever, but you know, in reality, you just getting ran through. You know what I mean?
Yo, y'all, you heard of the Godfather of Harlem, right?
Yeah.
Bumpy Johnson. I'm gonna show you where. I'm gonna show you the building he used to live in. Hold on. Look behind me. This Bumpy Johnson old building. Let me know if y'all can see that.
Your video.
Your screen frozen.
Yeah.
It's frozen. Hold on. Let me go out and come back.
Yeah.
How about now? It's still frozen?
Yeah, still frozen, bro.
I'm gonna go out and come back in.
All right.
Put the bottle out the water.
Oh, let's ready to get out, man. Come on, let's get out. Yeah. So I mean, I'm just looking at it like we at some point, like we just have to be like, look, this is, if you're gonna be talking about you black, then you're gonna have to do black politics, and you're gonna have to, and black politics is freedmen, descendants of freedmen politics. That's what it's gonna be about.
How about now?
You can't.
It's still frozen?
Yeah. No, you good now.
Good now. And you know
what's
beautiful about that, you know, and we could look at Bumpy Johnson for what it is, right? But there was something said in that series by the character playing Malcolm X. Malcolm X did say that in his autobiography, matter of fact. But he spoke about what happens when the gangsters become political. He said that would be the most dangerous individual to the American system. And according to the series, he was trying to push Bumpy Johnson in that direction. Like, you know, I need you to, like, it was like, I'd rather deal with you as a politician than Adam Clayton Powell. Because Malcolm and Adam Clayton Powell had their little back and forth. And this particular series highlights that. I don't know how much of it is 100% authentic, but the history shows us that. So
I can believe it. I can believe it because Adam was trying, like, he was like really like one of the kings in Harlem politically. He was like the man, you know what I'm saying? And but they, you know, there's a lot of people who, like Malcolm X, who were anti-establishment and probably didn't like the fact that he was working within the establishment the way that he was, you know what I mean? And, you know, I don't know, man, because I know Malcolm was at the time, especially when he was in the nation, very much anti-establishment. So that might have rubbed him the wrong way, wanting to do certain things in Harlem a certain kind of way, because Malcolm was the minister of that mosque on 116th and Lenox at the time. You know, that was his mosque.
Oh yeah.
And so Adam Clayton Powell was the councilman over this whole district. You know what I'm saying? And they probably wanted him to do certain things that he wasn't willing to do, because he had to work with the white man in not the councilman, he was a congressman. I just say congressman. He was a congressman. So yeah, but they probably wanted him to do certain things he wasn't willing to do. You know, and getting mixed up with Bumpy Johnson. Everybody knew who Bumpy Johnson was and what he was doing. You know, so I didn't want to do that. It didn't make political sense. It made political sense, man.
Yeah, man.
I might go out because I'm getting ready to go up under this structure. I have bad signal up under there.
Yeah, so
Yeah, my
for this.
phone is about to go out there. My signal is probably gonna be bad up in here.
All right, we're waiting for this verdict to be read. So I guess when y'all go out, I'll.
Now let me know, because I'm gonna stay on it. I don't know if it's gonna go out or not.
Okay, definitely. So they're gonna read it in about 15 minutes. So you know, I'm gonna keep it official with y'all, family. I haven't really been following this thing at all. I watched a little bit of it yesterday. That yesterday I think was the most that I've listened since this trial started. You know, you get tired of watching these devils murder us, and then instead of the devil that did the killing be put on trial, the innocent man that got killed, the innocent one of us, the victim, is the one that get put on trial. It gets so tiring, man. And that's why I was saying that series Them is right on time with that character. What you gonna do?
What you gonna do? Yo, at some point we gotta talk about Them, man.
Yeah,
we gotta cover the Them show.
Actually. I wanted to do that tonight. If we don't do it tonight, then we can. I mean, we got a couple days this week. I want to bring the brother Casual on from that West Coast group of Hieroglyphic. Those in the conscious community, you know, they know him as brother Jonathan, Smash Rockwell, and to talk about cryptocurrency and the markets, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know, but that was the plan tonight, was to actually, I'd seen Josh had put it in the inbox that we would talk about Them tonight. I don't know. I guess maybe we can watch it. Don't know how I'm gonna feel after this verdict is read. I'm gonna feel like that guy.
What if they find him guilty? What's the situation? What if they find him guilty?
Yeah, I mean, that's great because he is guilty, right? It's justice. And it's, it's so bad, right? That we have to celebrate justice. If it's a victory, then it's something that we have to celebrate only because it's anomalous, not because it's the right thing.
Right.
When OJ won, and this may seem a little sadistic, we cheered because we were like, yay, a black man finally got away with murder over a white person. That's what we was cheering for. And if anybody's honest, they're going to say the same thing. They're going to say the same thing. So,
Yeah.
Oh, Ms.
Yeah, I was just surprised. I was surprised that happened that way, man, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, you.
I was real shocked.
That caught me completely off guard. But when that verdict was read, if for me it was like the Knicks in the 7th game, 3 seconds left on the clock, they're down 2, and somebody just hit the winning 3-point shot in the corner to beat the buzzer.
Right.
I
Right.
remember jumping up like, yeah. That's crazy though
Everybody,
when you think about it, right?
yeah.
We have to
Everybody's
celebrate.
like Johnny Cochran was a bad man.
No,
Johnny
yeah, they
Cochran.
saying that in the chat right now.
Mm-hmm. Was a bad dude, man.
You know they got the conspiracy theories out that they
That,
murdered
that they
him.
killed him.
They killed him
It's
because he was
possible.
going for reparations.
It's possible.
That was one of the rumors, was that they murdered him because his next fight was going to be for reparations.
Yep. Yep. He was on it. I remember. I remember.
Mm-hmm.
He was definitely on it. After that, lights out.
Yep.
Shit was crazy. I remember.
So, either way, whatever happens. Oh, that's from earlier. Okay, so all right, I'll not say it that way. I'll say this: if he's exonerated
How you doing?
to any extent, then it's just a reminder that America doesn't care about us. We just did a stream for those who have just joined us and not, excuse me, who have just joined us and wasn't on the first. OJ wasn't guilty. The killer's glove didn't fit. That's right, Hitflix. What am I talking about? What am I talking about? Right, but I don't know. I never knew if he was guilty or not.
Yeah,
I just didn't care.
I didn't care, but I didn't think he did it. I don't think he did it. Now, whether or not he was involved in some kind of plot to have it done, that's a whole other argument. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I don't think he physically himself did it. No, not at all.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he would have been that stupid to do that, man. To even try that. I don't think so. I'm
Yeah.
trying to let y'all experience New York City, so that's why I kept the mic on. Let y'all hear all of the bullshit.
Yeah, man. You already know New York. When I get to New York, man, soon as I hit that George Washington Bridge, I flick on this switch and I'm in New York. I've owned a piranha. I've had a piranha before. And if you put blood in the water and you watch how their eyes that's how I am when I'm in New York. I'll get piranha eyes. You got to turn into your vibe got to change. It has to change in order to navigate that place, man. One day I had a passenger van. So I decided that I was going to drive through Manhattan like I drive through Georgia. Oh, that was so funny,
Thank you.
bro. Oh, they was cursing me out, man. And I was just loud. I was cracking up, looking at them and laughing. What the fuck are you doing, man? Move, drive. That was funny. That was funny. His flick said, yep, the George Washington Bridge makes you feel at home. Like when you on I-95 and you on that throughway going through New Jersey, it seemed like it takes forever because that traffic is crazy, right? But as soon as I hit that George Washington Bridge, man, I get alert. I don't care how tired I am. I get wide awoke and I plug into the energy of the city. And I'm on go the whole time I'm out there.
Yeah.
So we got a couple more minutes before this verdict is read. It is now 4:24. So, I mean, we're going to be streaming this thing. We just doing some small talk in the meantime. In between time, make sure y'all check out our stream that we just ended a few minutes ago, where we were talking about the Democrats not, somebody put a video in the inbox, Ben Crump video, April 15th. Man, this white dude, they was rustling to the ground. Not only did they not really apprehend this dude, he took their billy club, beat them with it, jumped in the sheriff's car, and drove drove off. Oh man. So, the argument is that they had to restrain George Floyd, who wasn't even resisting in that manner. The fact of the matter was, he said he was claustrophobic, and that was it, man. And so they put him on the floor. He wasn't resisting after that. He didn't understand what he was even getting locked up for. So Cato said he's nervous. Bob Sanders said it ain't justice unless he gets 87 years. Juanita Murray says everybody has to be careful. The people are going to be mad. I don't know what to I know not to expect justice from the system, but I think this is my prediction. I don't think he's gonna walk. If he does, I'm gonna be shocked. I ain't gonna lie about that, to just let him walk scot-free. So my prediction is I think they're just gonna give him the lowest amount of time. I think I seen was 5 years maybe, or something like that. So I don't know, man. Yeah, I seen that, Miss Battle. The defense of carbon monoxide poisoning is crazy. They're trying everything. See, the problem with the defense is that they're using spaghetti logic. And what I mean by spaghetti logic is they're throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks. Yesterday, Maxine Waters made a statement. It wasn't no volatile statement. The right made it a volatile statement. Fox News took the statement where she said, we got to become more active, basically become more confrontational in this thing. We have to fight. The defense attorney brought up Maxine Waters' statement. The judge repeats, he admonishes, I should say, Maxine Waters' statements on the bench, which was crazy to me. But the key thing that the judge said was, if Chauvin is found guilty, then that may be something you can bring up on an appeal, but it shouldn't be anything that affects this case, being that she said that. If I'm a juror, I'm thinking to myself, all right, this guy has been reaching since day one. Carbon monoxide poison. He had his knee on this man's neck, bending up his hands and his fingers, twisting his fingers, then got so comfortable that he started picking rocks out of the treads of the tires. So, let me see. Satra said, BTP, when will we talk HR 40 amendments and the Georgia HB 541 bill? I think we kind of covered HR 40 the other day when we had our roundtable discussion on it. The brothers Logic, I think, said it earlier. I agree with my brothers that there's nothing we can really do right now. The only thing we can do is try to assist in creating the proper language in the proposals as this bill moves forward. So, okay, I think they're going to start reading this trial now. So let's see.
Good afternoon. We're coming on the air at this hour because a verdict has been reached in the trial of former Minneapolis police officer
Y'all let me
Derek
know if y'all
Chauvin.
can hear that.
Closing arguments, of course, just 24 hours ago from both sides. The jury then given instructions late yesterday. They began deliberating. And again this morning, continuing with those deliberations. And now their decision
Can
expected
y'all hear it?
at any
Press 1
moment
in
in
the chat.
Minneapolis. Of course, we know that Chauvin is charged with the death of George Floyd, the
Okay,
country
cool,
watching,
cool.
the world watching those images. Chauvin with his knee to George Floyd's neck. It prompted an almost immediate reckoning in this country on race, justice, and policing in America. The prosecution focused on those 9 minutes, 29 seconds, and in their closing argument, reminding the jury of the 9-year-old girl, one of the witnesses, the bystanders, who said she heard paramedics 9 minutes later saying, "Get off of him." They said, "Believe what you see." The defense saying it was about more than those 9 minutes, trying to sow doubt in the jury's minds. The jury deliberating for 10.5 hours, 4 hours last night, 6.5 hours today. Chauvin facing charges of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. We heard his voice in that courtroom when he invoked his Fifth Amendment right last week not to take the stand in his own defense. Today, we learned President Biden called George Floyd's family yesterday. The president suggesting today that the evidence is, quote, overwhelming, and saying, quote, "I'm praying that the verdict is the right verdict." And the president adding he was only sharing those words because he knew the jury was sequestered and had begun their work. About 2,000 National Guard members on duty in Minneapolis, police in cities across the country on alert as well. And our entire team is standing by with us this afternoon as we await the verdict in the trial of that former Minneapolis police officer. I want to bring in our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams, to start our coverage here. And Dan, conventional wisdom, you know, they say it's made to throw it out. But in this case, there were no questions from the jury, no confusion over the charges, no notes sent to the judge, a relatively short amount of time to deliberate.
Yeah, you have to be very nervous if you're Derek Chauvin right now. First of all, because a hung jury is off the table. We now know that this jury is unanimous. And the fact that they didn't ask questions would again suggest that it's more likely, if you were sort of following the way these things go, that it's going to be the highest charge in this case. Why? Because if it was going to be a manslaughter, let's say, for example, you would expect that there might have been more debate about the definitions and discussions about third-degree murder versus manslaughter, et cetera. For a high-profile case, this is a pretty fast verdict. Some people will tell you, wait a sec, 10 hours plus, that's not so fast. That's true. But in high-profile cases, when the world is watching, the jurors typically want to cross the T's and dot the I's and make it clear to the world that they very carefully considered the evidence. So the fact that they have already come back here with so little coming from the jury has got to be very frightening news for Derek Chauvin right now.
All right, Dan Abrams with us as we await this verdict. Dan, stick with us here. I want to bring Sunny Hostin into this conversation, a former prosecutor herself, ABC News legal analyst, of course, co-host of The View. And Dan makes a good point there, Sunny, about these jurors obviously knowing the weight of this case and that the nation is watching them. And I just want to remind our viewers at home what Judge Cahill said when he was delivering instructions to the jurors. He said, "Do not let bias, prejudice, passion, sympathy, or public opinion influence your decision," and warning them not to consider what consequences their verdict might have. And the fact that they've deliberated for such a short window, what does that signal to you?
Well, conventional wisdom does tell you that fast verdicts hint at agreement. And I will tell you that in all of the cases that I tried, and there were many, especially in the criminal context, what you want as a prosecutor is a fast verdict, because when there are no questions, when there are no clarifications asked by a jury for jury instructions, when you have nothing to read from the jury, a fast verdict like this indicates that there is a full agreement. I am very surprised, actually, that they reached an agreement in such a high-profile case with 45 witnesses in just a little over 10 hours. That is very unusual in a case like this with 12 jurors. Sometimes in a civil case, yes, you get fast verdicts, but in this kind of case, it is very unusual unusual. I actually was expecting many questions. I was expecting some questions about legal clarification, jury instructions, clarifications. And I was actually, David, also expecting what we call the Allen charge, which is, okay, I understand that you are stuck. I understand that there's disagreement, but I want you to go back and do your best and come to an agreement. I was fully expecting something like that. And obviously that did not happen. The jury has reached an agreement. That's unusual.
Sonny Hostin with us this afternoon. Sonny, underscoring that point that there was not one question from the jury, not one point of contention or query to the judge about confusion over any of the charges, which, as Sonny suggests, points to agreement within the jury, obviously, given the short amount of time that they were deliberating. You're looking at a live picture of Minneapolis. We should mention that those images from inside the courtroom, that was during the course of the trial and the closing arguments. There is no live stream yet up and running from that courtroom. And we should also remind all of you at home that the reason there's a live stream in this case is because we find ourselves not only in this moment, this conversation, this racial reckoning in this country, but also in the middle of a pandemic. The judge deciding to make that rare choice to live stream this trial because he knew that members of the community and members of George Floyd's family would not allow to be in that courtroom given the restrictions on the number of people they're actually allowing inside that court. But in turn, in deciding to live stream the trial, that means the country can watch, the world can watch, and they are waiting for this verdict as well. I want to bring in ABC's Alex Perez, who's been on the ground in Minneapolis since this case began. And Alex, what's the temperature there in Minneapolis? I know it seems relatively calm, although the National Guard on scene, and they are preparing for this verdict as well.
Well, David, they've been preparing for weeks now for this verdict. Yes, there's those 2,000 members of the National Guard sort of scattered all around town. If you look around the downtown area here, most of the businesses are boarded up. People just did not want to take any chances. We remember those protests, those violent protests that happened here last summer, and people are afraid. They want to be ready for any sort of verdict to come. Now, David, we also want to talk about the jury. You know, we've been focusing on every single thing that they've done. And this is a group of jurors that has been taking notes every day during this trial. It was noted that they were attentive, that they were seemed inquisitive and paying attention to the experts who testified. And, you know, it's really hard to read the tea leaves in a situation like this. But one of the things that I noted yesterday, just in covering trials, yesterday the jury started deliberating very late, and they stayed an extra hour. Even after a long day, they stayed an extra hour. And this morning, they started deliberating about 90 minutes early. And to me, that seemed to indicate that perhaps they were close to reaching something and wanted to work on it. And now we know they have reached some sort of decision, and we're going to learn that decision very soon. And as we await that decision, David, I think about my conversation with Terrence Floyd, George Floyd's brother. And I remember he was in so much pain right after this incident happened. And one of the things he said to me was that seeing this case through, all the way through a conviction, was something that his family wanted for and would continue to fight for until they saw it. So they could have an answer to that very soon, David.
Alex Perez in Minneapolis. Alex, thank you. That was a live picture there of Minneapolis, South Minneapolis, not far from the scene of where this all began to unfold. About a year ago, Memorial Day last year, of course, the corner of Chicago and 38th Street there in front of the Cup Foods in South Minneapolis, George Floyd Square, as it's now called. I want to bring in Lindsay Davis because, Lindsay, you and I have talked so much about this case. We've been on the air together all along the way, and it's so rare that this country takes a sort of deep breath together to watch one of these moments come in. But this is one of those moments, given the reckoning, the conversation in this country. And I think that we were all struck a year ago, and then the continuing protests and conversations over the course of the year, the diversity in the faces of the people out in the streets, small towns, large cities, somewhat reassuring, I know, to the Floyd family as well, to see the diversity of the people supporting them and this conversation about policing injustice in America.
That's right. So many collectively holding their breath here, David. You can perhaps hear the helicopters above. I know that we just saw the crowds outside of Cup Foods at 38th in Chicago, but just a kind of scene set for you here, just a few blocks away from the courthouse in downtown Minneapolis, it's eerily quiet. You know, there are a few cars, but very few people out on the road. I went for a walk today just to kind of get a temperature and feel of the people. Happened to just come in contact with one man. He happened to be a black man. I said, so what what do we think? And he said, I think if they come back quick, we got him. And he had a personal pride. He was invested, some skin in the game. He kind of felt that he was taking this on certainly personally with regard to whatever the verdict would be. I was thinking about the jurors as well. I mean, there's people from all walks of life. You have 3 who are in their 20s, ranging in age. You have 1 woman who goes into her 60s, and 6 who identify as people of color, 3 of them black men. You have one who's a social worker, accountant, a chemist, a banker, a nurse. And we did get a lot of color during the jury selection about their thoughts on race and social justice and criminal justice. There was a white man who was very clear. He said, look, I believe all lives matter. You had a black man who said that when he had seen the video, he had told his wife that could have been me. And so going into this, they allowed these jurors that had these diverse opinions and backgrounds and experiences and perspectives. And then you had just a few days before before the trial culminated, the fatal shooting of Dante Wright, which the defense obviously wanted them to be sequestered and not hear that, but the judge allowed them to hear that, and so you have to wonder were
Dante Wright
at all impacted by that,
may have
and were they
also
able to just focus on
impacted
this
the
as an
jury
isolated
in a way to
incident,
show
or did they look
that
at the
these cops
historical
really just
injustice
don't
of
care
all this?
about black
Additionally, they
people.
knew about the $27 million settlement. This was the largest
Yeah, I
pretrial
think you might be
settlement
right.
in America's
You might be
history
right.
for this kind of a civil rights death. And so a lot going into what those jurors brought into this and what they thought as it all played out in real time.
We can hear the choppers overhead there in Minneapolis. Our thanks to Lindsay Davis, and we'll be checking back in with you over the course of this afternoon. These are live pictures on the ground there in South Minneapolis. Relative calm, as you can see, in this community and in so many communities across this country. I think people in their smartphones have heard that there is a verdict, the judge revealing that and saying that the verdict would be delivered in about an hour. That was a little more than an hour ago. So we are expecting that jury at any time. And Lindsay talking about the diversity of the members of that jury. And I know we have that graphic that actually breaks down members of the jury, if we have a moment to bring that back up, just to help folks at home understand that the jury selection was something that both sides so carefully spent time on in this case. Members of the jury, 5 men, 7 women, ages from 20 to 60 years old, 4 black jurors, 6 white jurors, and 2 jurors who self-identify as multiracial. One of the jurors, for example, a white woman in her 50s, she works as a nurse. She assured the court that even though she had seen a portion of that viral video, that the video of George Floyd on the ground, that she could be impartial. And she acknowledged that we all bring life experience to the jury if we are selected, and talked about how her background as a nurse could potentially help her make decisions in this case. I want to bring in Nightline anchor Byron Pitts, who's been covering this right along with us from the very beginning. And Byron, I mentioned this a moment ago in talking with Lindsay, the diversity of the faces of the families across this country who wanted justice after seeing that video themselves. And this has really been almost a year-long conversation in this country about how we move forward.
You're so right, David. And that's why this moment is so different from other moments in American history, where we've seen instances where Black America went one direction and white America seemed to go someplace else. In this particular moment, this case, the reaction seemed to be universal. The people of all stripes reacted in a very passionate way to the death of George Floyd. And David, I'm struck by something that you said earlier, that this is a deep breath moment for our nation. I think you're absolutely right. You think about these kinds of trials. I was looking at that trial, the 4 police officers in Los Angeles in 1992, the O.J. Simpson trial in 1995. This day is one of those moments where many Americans will hold their breath to see what happens. And David, I think in many ways we may have 2 verdicts today. We will have the verdict of this jury, this diverse jury, and in the hours and days to come, we will have the verdict of the American people. One can imagine that however it goes, a portion of America will see that justice was served. A portion of America will say that justice missed its mark. And I think while we wait for this verdict, it'll also be curious to see, and I think that's why we see the law enforcement presence in Minneapolis and other major cities across this nation, as we all, David, as you said, hold our breath waiting for this verdict.
And of course, Byron, no one wants to get ahead of themselves as far as this verdict is concerned. We do know that the relatively short amount of time and the weight of this case, as we heard from Sonny Hostin earlier, signals that there was agreement and fairly early on within that jury. That jury that was sequestered immediately after those closing arguments, immediately after getting instructions from the judge who asked them not to bring their bias into that decision-making, but also not to worry or be concerned with how the country and the world would react to their decision, because after all, the live stream showed the rest of us what transpired in that courtroom, with the exception of the jurors themselves. We all got to watch, but we didn't see the folks who will actually make this decision, who were there from day one during this trial. I want to bring in Terry Austin from Law and Crime, the network that covers this. She's been covering this case, obviously, for the better part of a year. And Terry, I wanted to remind people at home, as we await this decision from the jury, what the prosecution was up against here. They had to convince beyond reasonable doubt that Derek Chauvin's actions, his knee to the neck, was a substantial cause of George Floyd's death. Not the only cause, but a substantial one.
That's exactly right. And I think the jury did boil it down to two issues. That issue that you just mentioned, the fact that there was unreasonable use of force and that the substantial cause of the death was that unreasonable use of force. So they narrowed it down, and I think they came to a quick decision based on all of the evidence. And we had multiple witnesses who talked about this use of force. And of course, we had Chief Arredondo, who was pivotal in stating not only was this unreasonable use of force, but this was against policy and it was not showing the duty of care. The other issue that clearly the jury came to a very swift conclusion was the fact that the cause of death was the knee and it was unreasonable. And so they listened to all the medical evidence. They listened to all of the evidence from the police officers. They cut to the chase. I'm sure they did consider the different elements that the judge talked about as far as the second degree, third degree, and manslaughter. But I think they narrowed it down to what Jerry Blackwell said on his rebuttal, which was this: use the 46th witness on the stand, which is your common sense. If you believe that, in fact, what you saw on this video was unreasonable force and that the knee on the back and the neck caused the death, then you have to come back with the guilty verdict. And I do believe that's exactly what they did.
Well, we'll wait and see for that, because we also know that the defense spent 3 hours yesterday in its closing argument from defense attorney Eric Nelson to try to sow doubt among that jury, continuing with what he had done over the course of the trial, bringing up past drug use of George Floyd, his heart condition, asking was there the potential of any carbon monoxide from that patrol car? Did bystanders distract Derek Chauvin while he was right there at that scene with his knee to George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes, 29 seconds? And the defense attorney trying to make the case that this particular trial is about more than those 9 minutes, that the jurors, when they deliberate, should be thinking about, as he said, the 16 minutes that came before and what Chauvin came upon when he arrived at that scene. He tried to use images of them putting George Floyd into the patrol car, 3 officers trying to do that to no avail, to try to make the case that those were all factors that Derek Chauvin took into account in those 9 minutes. Of course, then the rebuttal from the prosecution, making the point that over the course of those 9 minutes, he certainly had time to react to what he was presiding over during those 9 minutes. And direct reaction to the carbon monoxide suggestion, saying if that were in fact the case, that the carbon monoxide was coming from the police patrol car. So he should have been aware of that too. So we saw a back and forth between the prosecution and the defense as they made their closing arguments yesterday. I want to bring in Kenneth Moten from Minneapolis. Kenneth was on the air with us yesterday as we were covering these closing arguments. I know that you have been in touch with George Floyd's family and his family's representation, Ben Crump and others, for their reaction to the prosecution's closing argument, and then the defense once we heard the 3 hours of their closing argument. And I'm curious if you're hearing anything in the last 24 hours and to the development of this last hour.
David, they are gathered in a hotel here in downtown Minneapolis. The words we're hearing right now at this hour, they're optimistic. They are in good spirits, but they're also anxious. eager, nervous as we await this verdict here. Also, we know that when it comes to this Floyd family, that in the past 10, 11 months or so since the death of George Floyd, this family has gone through a lot. Yes, they got a $27 million settlement, but they lost this loved one, this person they knew, who they watched in this video die at the knee of Derek Chauvin. And so for this family, they've gotten the good and the bad, David. They have gotten a lot of support, but they've also heard from the critics who believe that George Floyd shouldn't have resisted, that he was on drugs, that he was somehow at fault. But they've got a number of supporters, people who have been in these streets. And so Flonus Floyd, the brother of George Floyd, has said that he is urging for peace and calm after this verdict is read, but he knows that he can't control the anger on these streets for those people who are hitting the streets. And really, David, for this family, for months now, they have watched this country go through a racial reckoning. They've watched this country change, and many industries change because of this racial reckoning. But they truly feel that today, with this verdict, that today is their day of reckoning. David.
Kenneth Moulton in Minneapolis, and the family all along has asked for peace and calm across this country, something Terrence Floyd told me almost a year ago in Brooklyn, that they were deeply moved by the diversity of the faces in these protests across the country, but saying any sort of violence is not what their brother would have wanted. I want to bring in our senior national correspondent, Steve Osunsami, of course, following the case as well. And Steve, as you and I were on the air yesterday during these closing arguments, we heard the prosecution say
black
this
people
is
are so
not
nice.
an anti-police prosecution,
So
that this
damn
is the
nice,
case
man.
of Derek Chauvin, one
I was just
lone
thinking
officer
about
in this
that, bro.
particular trial. We know other officers will come later, perhaps later
I
this summer.
damn sure
But this
wouldn't be
case is about
telling
Derek
if that was
Chauvin, they
my
said.
brother.
And what
Tell
was
Nah.
fascinating in
calm
this
down
trial
and-
and somewhat rare, as
I
you
mean,
know,
Somebody
Steve, is
asked
that
him to
sort
say
of
that. Somebody asked him to say that. You know what I mean?
And whoever would have asked me to say that, I would have exposed them. Whether it be
Right.
Al Sharpton, Ben Crump, whoever, I would have absolutely exposed them. I'd have been like, these Negro bootlicks. I would have got
Right.
the real Khalid Muhammad on them. They want me to tell y'all to keep calm. If
Right.
this verdict goes against justice.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't want y'all to be mad. They want us to stay in our place. They don't want us to burn nothing, destroy nothing. Well, I ain't doing that. I ain't got no control over people's feelings, so I can't say nothing. If that was my brother, I'd have been like, they killed my brother. And they didn't, the cop wouldn't listen to the people that was telling him to get up, the citizens. So what makes you think I'm gonna be able to tell people anything? I ain't telling nobody nothing. Do what you feel. This is America, where you could kill a black man and get away with it if you white. That's exactly how I would say it.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy, man. And the sad thing about it is, our people are nice like that, but we're nice like that when it comes to Europeans, doing something. It with each other, there's no mercy. There's no mercy there. The crackback is relentless, man. But with them, it's like, oh no, we need calm and peace and hair grease and all that. Like, no, man. No. Because I'm gonna tell you, telling people to be peaceful may be the very wrong message to send right now. And I'm going to tell you why. You got to look at the time we in. Look at what those people were willing to do at the United States Capitol buildings. Right? And the reason they did it was because black people voted, and black people seem to have outvoted them in this presidential election. They didn't like that. So what did they do? They went and got violent, right? I saw a video circulating on social media talking about this European guy. And initially I was like, man, them guys are always talking that militia talk or whatever, right? But he was talking about, shit's going to go left. Shit is going to pop off. Basically, I'm just summarizing what he said. Shit is going to pop off. In the video, he's all strapped up. He's got his guns and his vests and all of this kind of shit, right? And you might have seen the video at, I don't even know. I've seen it on Instagram. But, this guy's talking that militia talk and talking about the white man and the white race and all this garbage. But I mean, some people might say, whatever, them guys always talking. But look at what they just did at the Capitol building. That wasn't that long ago, right? And to me, that demonstration at the Capitol building was really a way to show people that we don't need to take those kinds of threats lightly. I don't think we should. And so for, white supremacists, race soldiers, whatever you want to call them, that may be mad at a guilty verdict if they come back with one, we need to be very aware of that, be very mindful of that, and be very much on point in terms of you have the right to protect yourself and your family just like anybody else does. That's like one of the first things of self-preservation. You got to be able to protect yourself. You got to be able to protect your right to life, your right to the pursuit of happiness. All of those things they talk about, as these incredible principles in the Declaration of Independence, all of these beautiful principles that they laid out. You have the right to those things just as much as anybody who's calling themselves white. So if they're mad at a potential guilty verdict, if the verdict comes back as guilty for this guy and they start going off in this country, ain't no way in hell I would be willing to tell black people to be peaceful and chill out and all this kind of bullshit. No, hell no. That's the wrong message. I say be prepared to fight like hell, man. That's what I say.
What Mike Brown mother said, burn this motherfucker down. Let it
That's
burn.
right.
That's what I'm talking. That's what my mother gonna say.
Yeah.
Allah forbid. Burn it down.
Like, why should we be the only people going through shit? If we got to go through something in this country, why don't everybody experience it? Everybody should experience it. We should all be going through it. It shouldn't just be us. Why should we be the only ones going through shit? If that's the way it gotta be, then so be it. God damn it. Gotta go to war. You gotta go to war, man. You can't be acting all, man, please. You already know, man.
And when we interviewed Blow, man, and then reading his book, I was able to decipher some of what he was saying. And somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like he was saying, like, we gotta fight. That's why I thought it was such a good interview, because he wasn't towing at the line of the typical Democratic talking points.
Right.
And I thought it was a good interview. And from the book to the interview, I got that out of what he was saying. Like, we can't just continue to just let this happen. So that's why this Southern strategy push is so important. So important, man.
So many people are concerned about us being outnumbered. They're concerned about us not having access to firearms, ammunition. All of the manufacturers of the ammunition are Europeans. Black people don't produce the bullets. So you get into it that way, you're going to run out of bullets at some point, right? Then what are you going to do? I mean, I know this is the kind of, that's the kind of thinking that we're dealing with when we start talking about armed resistance and stuff like that, or physical fighting. But my question too is, what do you do? Like the man, the man said in the movie. I mean, in the series we're talking about. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? You gonna lay down and die? You gonna lay down and die, or what? Right? I mean, at some point,
He said, but I only got one shot. He was like, F them bullets.
yeah, that's
What
what he
you mean?
said.
You don't need no, yo, man, listen. I don't want to spoil it for people that ain't watching. I thought that series, Them, was fire.
Them was powerful. Them was powerful in terms of they touched on so many aspects of the Black American existence in this country. So many aspects of it. Like, I still feel like I need to watch it a second time because I'm sure there, just even looking at some of the things that people took away from it in the Lovecraft group, right? Some of the things that people took away from it, I was like, damn, I didn't even pick that up. But that's a dope ass observation. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm gonna watch it again. I know you started watching it the second time. I don't know if you finished, but I'm gonna
I
start
think I
watching it
stopped
again
at
as well.
episode, what's the black and white episode? 8? I think I
I'm
stopped
not
at,
sure. I don't remember.
no. I think I did make it to again through the whole thing.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't. I made it to episode 9. I didn't get through the last 10. The last episode 10.
Yeah, man. It's just, I can't, man. There's no way I could. I couldn't tell our people to calm and peace. That ain't the message, man. That's not the message. That's not the message, bro. I'm sorry.
That's not the
And,
message, man.
and I know, like I said, I know people. Somebody told him to say that,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I wouldn't say it. I wouldn't say it.
Hey, Cynthia, that move. See, we know all of the history, and we know the data. So when you watch that series, Them, you're gonna see it differently. You know, there's some people calling it black trauma porn. What the hell is
Right.
that? Black trauma porn. That term don't even make no sense to me. Sit around and think about some of this stuff. And excuse me, y'all, I'm chewing. I've been sitting here for a couple hours. I'm trying to nourish myself. But that series is good. It is deeply psychological. And maybe some people don't understand the series from that perspective, but that series was needed, and that's why I said,
Yep.
that guy. Hold on. That's why I said that the guy from this series is my spirit animal, and I wasn't playing. This guy right here. That's all of our spirit animal. If you think about it, if you really, really think about it, those of us who have encountered the racists and the racism in this country, that's what this character, in my interpretation, was made to represent. So y'all make sure y'all check out that series Them. I know it got
the
British cast and them people. Yeah, I had to overlook that one on this one because it wasn't based on a true story, but based on a series of truths that is American history. That's right, Riri. What you gonna do? That's my man right there. What you gonna do? Straight up. So let me get back to the stream so we don't miss nothing.
Yeah, I don't think nothing's come yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. I got CNN pulled up on the TV too, so it
All right.
ain't happened yet. Yeah, man, that's a deep question. What you gonna do? What you gonna do?
Anthony Dickerson said if manslaughter is
Somebody
a
keep
guilty
punching you in.
verdict,
Uh-oh, it's coming now. Here it
it's
comes.
coming.
The judge is on.
All right, they need to break away on
The
ABC. What's going on?
Turn it up, babe. Yeah.
Stand by, our entire team standing by.
Here we go, family.
All rise for the jury. All right, please be seated. Members of the jury, I understand you have a verdict. Members of the jury, I will now read the verdicts as they will appear in the permanent records of the 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota Plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, Defendant. Verdict, Count 1, Court File Number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by jury foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury foreperson 019. Members of the jury, I'm now going to ask you individually if these are your true and correct verdicts. Please respond yes or no. Juror number 2, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 9, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 19, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 27, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 44, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 52, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 55, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 79, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 85, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 89, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 91, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 92, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Are these your verdicts? So say you one, so say you all.
Yes. Yes.
Members of the jury, I find that the verdicts as read reflect the will of the jury and will be filed accordingly. I have to thank you on behalf of the people of the state of Minnesota for not only jury service, but heavy duty jury service. What I'm going to ask you to do now is to follow the deputy back into your usual room, and I will join you in a few minutes to answer questions and to advise you further. So all rise for the jury. All right, be seated. With the guilty verdicts returned, we're going to have Blakely, you may file a written argument as to Blakely factors within 1 week. The court will issue findings on the Blakely factors, the factual findings, 1 week after that. We'll order a PSI immediately returnable in 4 weeks. And we will also have a briefing on, after you get the PSI, 6 weeks from now, and then 8 weeks from now, we will have sentencing. We'll get you the exact dates in a scheduling order. Is there a motion on behalf of the state?
Your Honor, the state would move to have the court revoke the defendant's bail and remand him into custody pending sentencing.
Bail is revoked, bond is discharged, and the defendant is remanded to the custody of the Hennepin County Sheriff. Anything further?
All
right. Thank you.
So there you have it. The jury in Hennepin County in Minneapolis finding Derek Chauvin guilty on all 3 counts: second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. Guilty in all 3. You can see him being led away there in the courtroom. He had been out on bail. You heard the state request of the judge that bail be revoked and that he be taken into custody, which is exactly what the judge decided to do. You can see the counts up on your screen right now. The jury deliberating yesterday afternoon and then began deliberating again early this morning, but it was a short period of time before we learned that they had come to a unanimous conclusion. Clearly, they thought that the case made by the prosecution and perhaps that final closing argument, that rebuttal from Jerry Blackwell when he said to the jury, it's as simple as what that 9-year-old girl, one of the bystanders, said that she heard the paramedics say when they arrived there more than 9 minutes after that knee was put to George Floyd's neck. She said that she heard paramedics say, get off of him. Of course, in the hours and the days to come, we will learn more from that jury, what they were thinking over the course of this 3-week trial. But we wanted to look at the reaction coming in from Minneapolis. This was the scene in South Minneapolis just moments ago. They had described the sound of people gathering there, obviously erupting. Embracing one another, and in many ways for that community and for the people who have gathered there, it has been an extraordinarily long year in this country. This was the scene again, George Floyd Square. This is reaction from the families, George Floyd's family, with their legal team, Ben Crump, we know, leading that team, clearly overjoyed. They believe justice has been served in this case. Derek Chauvin found guilty on all counts. And I want to bring in our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams, as we look at these images. Clearly, the pause there is in between each count as the judge was reading from that piece of paper delivered to him by the foreperson of the jury. And Dan, guilty on all counts. They believe the prosecution made its case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yep, on each and every charge. And remember that there are slightly different theories with regard to second-degree murder and third-degree murder. I mean, there was a possibility that he could be found guilty of second-degree murder, not of third-degree murder, and then guilty of second-degree manslaughter. That didn't happen. This was a prosecution clean sweep here. And now Derek Chauvin will be sentenced on the highest charge, which is second-degree murder, faces up to 40 years. The sentencing guidelines in Michigan suggest more likely 10 to 15 years. But I'll tell you, David, you mentioned that 9-year-old girl, and she could be relevant in the context of sentencing because prosecutors can ask for what's called an enhancement in the sentencing, meaning to go beyond what the guidelines would suggest because a child was present. And so that 9-year-old girl was not just an emotional witness, but she could become a very important witness with regard to the potential sentence that Derek Chauvin gets. You heard him, the judge then referring to the Blakely standard, and that means basically start preparing for the argument over sentencing. And that will be the next phase of this case to determine what the sentence for Derek Chauvin will be. But at this point, certainly a big win for the prosecution in this case, getting everything that they asked this jury for.
Just to drill down on that point, Dan, as per Minnesota state law, the jury will decide, the judge will decide sentencing on the highest of the charges, which of course is unintentional second-degree murder. The presumed sentence is usually 10 to 15 years, but he faces up to 40 years. And as you mentioned, the state will ask for what's called an aggravated sentence here, and he could face decades behind bars.
Absolutely. And, I think that is going to be, really the next big debate in this case over exactly what should be the sentence for Derek Chauvin. Again, as we talked about when the jury reached its verdict and we said they came back so quickly, this is not good news for Derek Chauvin. Again, on the sentencing side, I wouldn't want to be Derek Chauvin either, meaning that, typically, and it's not just typically, it's really the vast majority of cases where you're talking about second-degree murder or third-degree murder. You are talking about up to 15 years. But in this case, based on a number of factors, I expect the prosecution to ask for more time, and the judge will have to determine that. And David, I want to just add one other quick point, which is about the diversity of this jury. And I think it's important because we often talk about diversity and it sounds like a concept, as opposed to something that can actually instill a sense of confidence in people about a verdict. The fact that there were 4 people who were African American on that jury, there were 2 who described themselves as multiracial, 6 whites, and they all came together and very quickly agreed on this verdict. This was a jury of peers. And as a result, I think that that's helpful in instilling confidence in the verdict for the community at large.
And Sonny Hostin, as we look at these images coming in from across the country, but first, of course, from Minneapolis, relief in that community. And you yourself said, as a former prosecutor yourself, when you heard that there was a verdict and this quickly, that even you had thought there would be at least questions from perhaps the jurors for the judge, and there was not. Unanimous, guilty on all charges.
Yeah. David, I've been a lawyer for 27 years, and I remember when I was in law school during my first year, the Rodney King verdict came out, and it was an acquittal for 4 officers who, on video, beat and stomped and tased beat a man 56 times with a baton. And I believed my eyes then. So I believed my eyes this time with George Floyd. And even though I knew that fast verdicts always hint at an agreement, even though all of my training told me that they likely convicted on at least the highest count or at least the lowest count, because of the history in this country, because it is so rare that police officers are convicted, because Black men and Black boys are killed by police with impunity in this country, and that is just the truth, at a rate 5 times more than their white counterparts. Because I am the mother of an 18-year-old boy who is now in South Africa, and I feel that he is safer in South Africa than he is in his own country. I am so relieved that this is what justice finally looks like for my community. And while I know that this does not bring George Floyd back to his family, to his loved ones, to his brother, who we've heard from so eloquently, at least I believe now that the movement that we've seen since his murder on video for the world to see is not just a moment. I really believe that this is a movement that we've seen. And for that, I am so very thankful that perhaps we will see real change, much needed change in this country.
Sonny Hostin, with some very personal reflections on our coverage this afternoon and the guilty verdict from the jury in Minneapolis. Sunny, thank you. And when you couple what Sunny said and her observations along with what Dan Abrams said just moments before her, that perhaps this could be a unifying moment when you think about the jury and the diversity, the makeup of that jury. 6 white jurors, 6 people of color, 4 black jurors, and 2 who self-identify as multiracial, that they all deliberated together and in just a short period of time were united on what they saw when they watched those 9 minutes and what they heard over the course of 3 weeks inside that Minneapolis courtroom. You can see they have begun to put up signs in Minneapolis. That's the scene from South Minneapolis. Justice served is what that sign says underneath George Floyd's name now. They've now put that up on the sign. And my colleague, Lindsay Davis, is in Minneapolis. And Lindsay, the reaction there.
David, you know, there was a novel by Terry McMillan, subsequently a movie called Waiting to Exhale. Today it was so much more than that. That was All of Us. And just a little while ago, I was telling you about how the streets here were empty. You hardly saw any people or cars. Well, suddenly now you hear just this celebratory honking. I saw a small group of black people walk by who chanted Black Lives Matter. And certainly, you know, this verdict doesn't change our criminal justice system, but perhaps for some, at least for this day, if nothing more beyond that, it does send this message. And for those who consider this to be a win or a victory, perhaps they owe a debt to Darnella Frazier, the 17-year-old who shot that video, because so much was made of the prosecution's saying, but for the knee, right? And I imagine many today are saying, but for the videotape, would we find ourselves in this place today? After all, if we go back to how this started, all with a counterfeit $20 bill, a crime that Chief Arredondo testified that normally they wouldn't even take somebody into custody for. So much jubilation really on the streets here.
Lindsay Davis on the ground in Minneapolis for us as we continue our live coverage of the verdict in the trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. He was a veteran with the police force there in Minneapolis, a 19-year veteran, 45 years old. He's been found guilty of second-degree unintentional murder, guilty of third-degree murder, guilty of second-degree manslaughter. We're getting some color from inside that courtroom, and of course the live stream offers the country and the world a perspective that we would not have seen had we not been in this pandemic. The judge saying he was doing this live stream because the community would not be allowed to come into the courtroom and witness this trial as it unfolded. But some of what we can't see in that courtroom has just come in, and this is from the print reporter who was inside the courtroom. They're allowing a reporter or two inside that courtroom every day, but because of restrictions, just a small number of reporters. They described the scene as the judge said, all rise. The jurors entering that courtroom, we are told all of them looked serious. None of them looked emotional, or that they had been teary, or that there had been, emotions exchanged while they were deliberating. All of them, in this note that we've been given by the print reporter who was in the room, serious as they walked into the courtroom. Judge Cahill reading the verdicts on that paper as Chauvin stared at the empty witness podium. And as you saw at home, as we were carrying this live, this is the era that we're in, the face mask. There was very little reaction unless you're reading the eyes of Derek Chauvin. And I do believe we have video of the actual moment. You won't be able to see much, but here's what we saw.
Permanent records of the 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, defendant. Verdict, count 1. Court file number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror foreperson, juror number 19.
And that's the reaction from Derek Chauvin as he went through each of the counts.
Above entitled matter as to count 2.
As you can see.
Third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by jury foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury foreperson 019. Members of the jury, I'm now
There you
going to
have
ask
it,
you
Derek
individually.
Chauvin,
These are
his
two
reaction
different
inside
verdicts.
that courtroom, of course, wearing a mask, which
Yes or
makes
no.
it very difficult
Juror number 2 are
for anyone to truly judge at home what the reaction was, though it seemed rather stoic, calm, and as he was led away from the courtroom, no resistance, and that was in the note that he stood up, that certainly his defense attorney prepared him for the very likely scenario that if he was found guilty, that the state would ask the judge to revoke bail, which is exactly what they did. And of course, given his background in law enforcement, he knew that was very likely what would happen if found guilty on really any of the charges. Those are the descriptions from inside the courtroom. And of course, we'll learn more in the hours and the days to come. One of the things that we were struck by today is that even before this verdict was delivered by this jury in Minneapolis, we heard from President Biden at the White House weighing in on this case. And he said he was only weighing in, offering what he did, because he knew that the jurors in this case had been sequestered and would not hear what the president was saying. The White House revealing today that he did call the family of George Floyd in the last 24 hours. And I want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega, because Cecilia, you were telling me just before we came on this afternoon that we were actually expecting to hear from President Biden, but that was put on hold. And we obviously assumed it was because the White House knew this was coming, not what verdict was coming, but that there was a significant development and that we would soon learn it.
And David, I know from speaking with sources over the last few weeks in the lead up to this moment that we are in as a country, that they've been trying to figure out the right way to have the president speak out and address the nation. I expect that we will hear from him at some point soon. We do know from colleagues that here in the White House who are inside the White House right now that we've seen people. Are we going to hear from him? Is that what you're telling me? No, okay, not yet. But we have seen preparations, staffers at a podium. So we do expect to hear from him. I would not be surprised. We know, David, that the president has been watching this trial very closely, and that he has developed a relationship with the family of George Floyd. You mentioned that he spoke to his brother today, and the press secretary told us earlier this afternoon that this is, of course, a president who knows intimately what it means to live with grief. And he has that connection with the family of George Floyd, and that the president himself has said that he developed a connection with them. But he did make these controversial comments earlier this morning when the president said that he believed that the evidence against Chauvin was overwhelming and that he was praying for the right verdict. The White House would not clarify when they were pushed on what that right verdict meant. But David, we know what President Biden has said all along, that he believes that George Floyd was murdered, but that he believed he suffered at the hands of brutality in his death. So we also know, though, that we heard that warning from the judge in the courtroom, Judge Cahill, just yesterday, that he warned politicians against making statements on this case for fear that it would taint the jury, even though they are sequestered. The president and the White House have said that he would not have made this statement like this if they were not, in fact, that jury was not sequestered. So they tried to sort of back away from that. But we have heard from defense attorneys in many cases that they believe that it isn't appropriate for politicians to comment and weigh in ahead of jury verdicts for fear that they could end up being part of an appeal. It is extremely unusual to hear from a president in a case like this one. Nonetheless, we are here, David. We are waiting from word from the White House when and if we will hear from the president address the nation. I expect that to happen.
And one more point I wanted to ask you about, Cecilia. One more thing that the president said, and I know that you monitored this as well, is that he said that he knew that the jury was under significant weight in this case, that they were aware of what they were going to be deliberating over. He said, I'm praying the verdict is the right verdict, but he also said, I can only imagine the pressure and anxiety they're feeling, and so I waited until the jury was sequestered before I called George Floyd's family. And we heard, Cecilia, from the judge in this case, too, as he thanked them for their service. And this is going to be an extraordinary extraordinary part of the story that unfolds over the course of the next few days, the weight that these jurors felt, but the judge thanking them for the heavy duty jury service from those jurors.
Exactly. And President Biden touching on that. You know, David, this is a moment in our country that we are living in as a country collectively that is not lost on this White House, that is not lost on this president, not just what the jury, not just what everybody in that courtroom went through, not just what the people of Minneapolis and that community and the family are going through, but what this country is going through. And just think back to the campaign. This is a man who campaigned on racial reckoning, who said he got into this race because of what happened in Charlottesville under President Trump. He was propelled in part, large part, into office by the help of African-American voters in this country. That is how he won the nomination. So he feels the weight of this moment and this cultural reckoning that we are in. But David, there is also a political side to this as well. He promised police reform. He promised action on police reform on day one, and that has yet to happen. Instead, he is not backing a police commission that he said he would, a study commission. He is instead hoping on action on Capitol Hill that is stalled right now, David.
Cecilia Vega monitoring developments from the White House. If and when we hear from President Biden, we will go right back to Cecilia. I should mention that many of our stations in the East might be joining their local news broadcasts, but we will continue until 6 p.m. Eastern. So should we hear from the President, we'll bring that to you live. We will also bring you
we could give a short commentary on it if you want, man. I mean, because it's pretty much self-explanatory at this point. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you, bro.
All right. Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. The next thing is the sentencing. And so I just hope that there's no leniency, you know what I mean, on any sentencing because, you know, people concerned about, you know, the police in this country and what white cops are going to feel about being, you know, this man being, you know, being convicted. You know, how is this going to affect the morale of white male cops in this country? You know, so I hope they're not lenient on any sentencing due to something like that. You know, that's just my concern at this point.
There was something
What are
that
your
one
thoughts?
of the anchors said that I thought was key, important. And he said when they're doing the considerations for the sentencing, I think specifically that one where he can get up to 40 years. He said that 9-year-old's testimony might come back to haunt Chauvin in that case because a child was involved. I don't know the depth of what he meant legally. So I didn't
Well,
really...
she was present. She probably was standing there when it was happening and was an eyewitness to what happened. So the traumatization of a child watching that, and like you said, the citizens are screaming at this man to stop, like get off of him. He can't breathe. He's dying. You know what I'm saying? And the 9-year-old child had to witness that. That changes the perception of the police in the eyes of the babies. It's like, so you're now shaping the thoughts of the babies on how they're supposed to perceive police. You know, and that's a terrible, terrible thing. It's one thing to have to argue that, oh, well, you know, a bunch of grown people watched Rodney King get the shit beat out of him. And so, you know, he wasn't complying. He kept moving. So, you know, they can do all of that tap dancing. But when the baby is standing right there watching the whole thing go down and listening to her parents, probably her mom, whoever was with her, probably yelling at the cop and all of the other people yelling at the cop to stop, get off. He can't breathe. He's crying. He's dying. He's calling for his mother. All this stuff. The baby had to witness all of that. What does that do for the perception that young people have for the police and the respect that will go along with that or lack thereof? You know, that's crazy.
Oh yeah. I mean, so. You know, I just posted in the chat a breakdown of the maximum sentences of each charge. Second-degree murder carries a maximum sentence of 40 years. Third-degree murder carries a maximum sentence of 25 years. Second-degree manslaughter is punishable by up to 10 years. So, you know, obviously whatever he gets is gonna run concurrent. So, you know, he could basically face only 10 to 15 years. And I mean, I believe that we witnessed the first degree murder. We witnessed the first degree murder.
Yeah.
You kneeled on that man's neck. And, you know, I guess they figured that they would probably not find him guilty on that charge, right? Like he went in with the intention of murdering that man. So I can understand that from, you know, what little I do know. So
Yeah, what I was thinking about was, what does this decision mean for the viewpoints of America? And we can break it down like white America. How do they believe that we live in a more just country now because of this decision? Or do black Americans feel that now we live in a country where we finally gonna get justice? Or is this just a one-off? And it was like so egregious that it's like there's no way that this one could have, you know, and it was so much political pressure. It was, you know, it had been publicized so widely that this was the one. Like this, like you had to take it to this heights just so you can get justice.
Look, Josh, this is how we're gonna really gauge that question. Pat Robertson, right? The 700 Club, right-wing Christian old devil. Even he said what Derek Chauvin did was wrong. And what that cop did to Dante Wright was wrong. So when we get to the trial of that she-devil that killed that young boy for no reason, that's when we'll be able to get a good gauge on that answer. Well, on your question. That's when we'll get a good answer, right? About how, because on one side it's going to always be one way. The guy from New York, what's his name? The Police Benevolent Society, or PBA, I think it is.
Pat something.
Yeah, something. It's right there. I just can't pull it right now. Even he called what Chauvin did murder. He disavowed it. So for them,
really, the Pat dude.
Yeah. When it first happened, I was shocked.
Wow.
I mean, I was absolutely shocked. And we know that dude is a straight racist, right? So, you know, Arthur Ward said this is a one-off, too egregious. And that's why I said we're going to know with this Dante Wright situation. How do you not know that? Damn, wait, Sister S. McGee. I don't want to say your first name wrong, sis, so I'm going to just say S. McGee. She says Chauvin is going to get 10 years. Keep in mind that Officer Muhammad Noor, who worked in the same police department, got 12 years for shooting in a car window and killing Justine,
a white woman,
white lady. I'm gonna just, because I ain't gonna try
from
to
Australia. Yeah, I remember that.
Right. So, yeah. So,
I wouldn't call that justice.
Look, this sister posted on this channel that I'm watching. They interviewed some black women. They asked them. They interviewed some black. I guess she meant they asked her what are they gonna do, and they said they're gonna fire the grill up. Like this, you know, there's an emotion attached to this, but it's so, again, I gotta stress that it's so bad that we have to celebrate justice. We have to celebrate justice. So you got people. People saying it's a one-off. That chick that killed Dante Wright, that's gonna be key. I think that's gonna be key. That trial is gonna show people, look, you can't kneel on black people's necks like that. That's like lynching them with the rope. You can shoot them. You can shoot them. You just can't kneel on their necks. Just can't kneel.
You can do drive-bys on 12-year-old kids in the park.
Yeah.
But you just can't put the knee on the neck.
Yeah,
That's just you can't put the knee on the neck when white girls is crying, no stop, and for 9 minutes. While it's live stream. You can't do that. But it pretty much anything under that, you can get away with.
Yeah.
At least we know, at least they know where the bar is, You can shoot a brother that's with his kids 7 times, and he got to get his a lot of his organs cut out of his body. Half of his intestines. I think he lost 60% of his intestine or something like that. He's paralyzed from the waist down or something.
Paralyzed, yeah.
Neck down, yeah. So, but you can do all that, and you can go back to work, in a few months. But what you can't do is you can't kneel on the neck, And matter of fact, you can do that if you are justified in doing it if he's selling cigarettes. But if you get if he gets caught with a counterfeit $20 bill, that's not something that then you're not justified.
Basically.
Right.
Or be selling CDs outside of a corner store.
But you got to remember too,
selling loose cigarettes, right? They let them off though.
Right.
For their yeah, go ahead, Ali.
Those are different. Like, we got to look at it too as state by state issues, and the juries that are involved in those particular instances. So I know people say we kind of make these blanket statements like, they can get off for doing this, that, and the third, but that happened in Minnesota, right? So Minnesota, in that particular court, with that particular jury, they were able to come to this verdict under these circumstances. The jury in terms of the Eric Garner case in New York was a different jury. And they were not, or they decided not to come to any kind of guilty verdict. Same thing with the Tamir Rice situation. I forget which state Tamir Rice was in, but we got to look at them as these are different states with different people, different juries, and each jury is charged with coming to a certain conclusion. So I don't look at it necessarily as a general consensus in terms of like, this is how police are going to be able to do. This is just what happens in different states. And under these circumstances, because the George Floyd thing was so crazy and caught on camera the way that it was, I mean, even though Eric Garner's thing was caught on camera too, it's just, I think that what happened with Eric Garner helped to lead up to the George Floyd outcome. Same thing with Tamir Rice, that was caught on camera. So these things being caught on camera, I think led up to this point, to the frustration and the fact that the country, not only the country, the whole world was fed up and demonstrated it. Right? You've never seen a demonstration like we saw after the George Floyd murder before. Like, you're talking about worldwide demonstrations, man.
I mean,
over that. That was
I've seen demonstrations in Iran.
Yeah. Yeah, the George Floyd thing was a special, I would say it was a special situation. It was a special situation, and it was something special about that it affected the entire world. It affected the entire world. They was turning up in the UK over George Floyd. They was turning up in South Africa and fucking South America, in certain places in the Caribbean, over this George Floyd thing, man. It was like, I guess maybe what you would say, a perfect storm. The pandemic was here. Everybody was home. They didn't have nowhere else to be except out in the street. So I think the frustration behind all of these other things that we talked about, Sandra Bland and you name it, and then right after George Floyd comes Breonna Taylor, who's inside of her home. We had just came off of the one in Texas where the white girl that shot the dude in his house, and she only got like 4 years or something. So the frustration, the you know, the pandemic, everything, all of this stuff, it was like kind of like a perfect storm to get us to this place, you know. So I don't necessarily, we'll see what happens in the next incident, man. But I don't look at it as just like a one-off, so to speak. It could be that. It could be that, but we'll see what happens. But a lot of that has to do with jury selection. You know what I'm saying? It has to do with the prosecution presenting the case the way it needs to be presented. You know, all of that kind of stuff. And the states that you're in, you know, Eric Garner, I believe, was in Staten Island, right? He wasn't even in Harlem. He was in Staten Island. The racial demographic of Staten Island is one where there's a large Italian population, right? And so Italians have this thing a lot of times towards Black people, particularly when they're on the police force in the prosecutor's office. A lot of prosecutors are Italian for whatever reason. And they always have this thing towards Black people, right? Like this thing, like they don't really like you. And so out there in Staten Island, they were not able to put together the right jury that would have been beneficial to conducive to the type of outcome that we were looking for as Black people, not out there in Staten Island. It's just not going to happen. You know, what are y'all thoughts on it?
No, I agree. Staten Island, number one, is a very racist place, and it's where a lot of the New York City cops, particularly the ones that policed in Queens, came from. So no, I agree.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That was a tough one to get the right jury that will come back with the right verdict for Eric Garner in Staten Island of all places. Like, nah, that's hard, man.
Well, look,
see, that's what I mean. You got to kind of look at.
No, I feel you.
Yeah, go ahead.
The white supremacists are on it. Let's pull up this tweet. Ben Shapiro, who is a Jewish kid, right? I mean, white supremacy is white supremacy, but
yeah,
I wonder what they call him in like Jewish communities. Like we got Uncle Tom or Sambo. I wonder what they call this guy for caping so hard for white supremacy and a white supremacist faction of this nation, fascist faction of this nation that screamed, "The Jews will not replace us." But anyway,
right.
Somebody retweeted CNN's Don Lemon. Justice has been served. This clown retweets, and we all know he would have never said this had the reverse verdict been reached. Like, really? Why would he have said that, you idiot? And somebody responded and said, almost like there's a difference between a murderer going free and not. You see? So, you know, they trolling this clown right now. And I mean, look, they're going to do what they do because they know that, you know, this guy is one of those people that help rile up the base for the neo-Confederate faction of politics, which is the base of the Republican Party. Make no mistake about it. They have never stopped being the Confederate Party, ever. They've always been that. And, you know, they've just been controlling politics for so long. So now they're in fear with that bill. I believe it's HR 1. And they're losing their grip. They are passing all types of voter
Right.
suppression measures. They are, I mean, you can't even protest. They trying to arrest you for protesting in certain states.
Or
We
run
was
you
doing
over.
or yeah, you right. You can run a person over if they're in the streets protesting and you're in your car and you feel that they're in your way. The state is going to give you the right to run them over. This is why we have to become more politically active. We have to get more of our people involved. We have to think about our Southern strategy and moving our people from these states like Minnesota, like New York, from California, from Michigan, all of these places. Like let's go back to the South. I say we start with Mississippi, but we could also start with states that's nearer to us. If you live in Kentucky, it might be time to get out of Kentucky. Might be time to go on over to North Carolina or South Carolina. Just saying.
Right.
What is it? There's nothing but poverty there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's time for us to start considering not just our future, but the future of our children and the future of our people, man, because we've read some damning statistics on this platform. We've interviewed the author of that strategy. You know, I'm not saying that he's an originator of the strategy. I'm saying he's an author of the strategy that we are speaking about, Brother Charles Blow. He said in 30 years, man, we're basically going to be non-existent here. We'll have no political power. Now, I say move out of Florida, Brother Bob Sanders. I think all the black people in Florida and in Texas need to move up through Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, right? And all the people in Texas need to move on over to Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Like that's, you ask me, that's what I'm going to be promoting. That's what we need, and that's what I'm going to be promoting from now on. That's what I'm going to be promoting from now on. So,
yeah, and you know, we need to look at how to strategically array those numbers. You know, because you know, essentially what we're talking about is not being a tiebreaker, but you know, being the one that you're sought after, like, and you're the one that actually makes these things count. Like you're making policy. You're making, you know, when people look at, let's look at the presidential election, right? Presidential election will have to come through your states to get votes. And instead of you just being the tiebreaker vote, you're being the dominant. When you're the dominant population, they're going to have to speak to some things to, you know, and add what you want to their platform if they think they're going to get any of those votes. When we're talking about the Congress, we're talking about they're going to have to add, when they want to pass any bills, they're going to have to add consideration for what we need and what we're asking for. If you want to get us to co-sponsor, if you want to get us to vote in favor of certain bills, that's just what it's going to mean. And you know, I guess we would also have to look at those, because everybody's not going to move, obviously. But like when you mentioned Florida and Texas, those two states have the most amount of our people in it. It's like those are two of the top three, and then like New York, Florida, and Texas, they all pretty much have close to the same amount. So we need to look at, you know, if not everybody move, because that's not going to happen, but how many do we need to take to strategically array? I mean, we look at like Mississippi, to get a majority, I think really need 700,000. Texas or Florida, you each get 350,000, and which represents less than 10% of the black folks in those states. Just less than 10% move to Mississippi, you know, then get another 10% to move to from each state to move to where else do we need? Alabama, right? That's how. Just those 2 states alone, it's a huge population of us. Or Louisiana. It's not hard. It shouldn't be too hard for a lot of the Black folks to move back to Louisiana, because I know many of them who moved after Katrina went to Houston or somewhere like that. So, just getting them to move back to Louisiana, that would increase the population, So Texas and Florida, those are definitely states we need people moving from. And of course, New York, Los Angeles, Detroit, Philly. But we gotta make this thing happen, man, because we will see, I believe, we wouldn't be such a it would be a surprising thing if we didn't get justice in situations like this in states that we would have a majority population in.
Right.
Agreed.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
I'm just looking at on CNN, the prosecutor, the Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, and the county attorney there was speaking. They're doing like a live press conference on CNN. So just was checking that out. But what was you getting ready to say, brother?
No, I was just gonna say, we can close this thing out. We might come back on
no doubt.
later. We was gonna discuss them, but I don't know, man. The mood is kind of shifted. My whole thing was to just try to remain neutral. Been through too much emotion up and down in my life with situations like this. So my whole thing was to just try to remain neutral. And that was it. So we're gonna close this out, and we might come back on at 8:30, fam. So I'll discuss it with the bros and see what they want to talk about, et cetera, et cetera.
No doubt. All right, y'all.
All right, fam. So, y'all already know what it is, man. If you haven't hit the like button, hit it on your way out. We still trying to build up this channel. And if we go live tonight, it's going to be on the main channel, the Be the Power channel. So, let me see. Yeah, that's it. So, look, y'all already know what it is. Don't just fight the power. Become the power, and then and only then will you have the power to make a change. With that, I say peace.
Peace. Peace.
Peace, y'all.